Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Martin. I wanted to talk with everybody today about a subject that is not near and dear to my heart, but impacted me for a significant amount of time, and that's the subject of chronic pain and how I use plants to help me heal from that condition. But first, I want to start with a story, and I'll bring you guys into the Amazon jungle. There's an old French saying, pain is the craft entering the apprentice, which a dear friend of mine shared with me while we were deep in the Amazon jungle. And at the time, he and I had been just writhing in exquisite physical, spiritual, emotional, and psychological pain. Just to give you a picture, neither of us had eaten in days. We were on diet. We were extremely dehydrated. Neither of us had really had any salt for months, and we'd been drinking ayahuasca for pretty much every other night for 8 weeks in a row. Our skin was just raw from mosquitoes and chigger bites. We hadn't talked to our loved ones. There was some cockroaches crawling on my toothbrush, I remember. There was a tarantula in the shower. My friend was shitting actual blood from a long damaged GI tract, and I myself was contorted in this sort of origami of nerve pain, which was the reason that I had come down to the jungle in the first place to heal. And, in all that boiling heat and humidity and utter exhaustion, as if to drive the point home, a dead bat fell from the thatched roof of my tambo or hut and just hit smack dab on the floor right next to my bed. And I remember looking over at my good friend, and I was like, it feels as though the jungle just wants us to die, as if it's praying for us to die. And he just repeated the phrase, pain is the craft entering the apprentice. And that line would later remind me of another one, this one by Nietzsche, who said, the strength of a person's spirit, let me see if I can remember it, can be measured by how much truth he can tolerate. Or more precisely, to what extent he needs to have it diluted, disguised, sweetened, muted, or falsified. And that gets to me at the point of pain being akin to truth, because you can't escape it. You can certainly try to, and you can try to dilute it with entertainment. We can try to disguise it with fake happiness. Oh, I'm having a great day, when you're really not. You can try to sweeten it with food or a new car, something to buy. You can mute it through willful ignorance. You can falsify it by way of other distractions or wishful thinking. But avoiding the truth only causes more pain. And so whether you face pain head on or choose to tolerate it directly, or whether you choose to resist it, which again causes more pain, either way the truth is going to wake you up. Either way. And it's just saying, like, look at me, know me, here I am. And in that way, pain simply is. Hence why it's pure truth. It's a master teacher who teaches us a lesson about ourselves and our cells in our body, all of which have the potential to help us to learn, and in an attempt to strengthen our spirit, from my perspective. That is, if we tolerate it like a good apprentice. And as another phrase goes, pain is mandatory, suffering is optional. And that brings me to healing trauma. By teaching us about our bodies, pain also teaches us about our emotions and the thoughts that create them. If we were to use an analogy of states of matter, where we have gas, liquid, and solid, we would have thoughts, emotions, and beliefs that are analogous to each one of those states of matter. And so we start to understand through the experience and the sensations of pain, whether that be psychological and or emotional pain, how we respond to it on an emotional and thought level. And how can we think and feel differently in order to heal ourselves? Where does the pain actually come from? What thoughts and emotions is that pain connected to? So if we endure pain long enough, as is the case with chronic pain and was my case, we also learn how all pain is temporary, and that only our inner self is eternal and infinite. And that is, we learn the truth again about reality. So on my path of both resisting, managing, and tolerating chronic pain, and finally healing it, in working against pain and working with it, I learned that, as Dr. Peter Levine, the founder of somatic experiencing, once put it, that trauma is fundamentally a highly activated, incomplete psychophysiological response to threat, which has been frozen in time. What is significant in the resolution of trauma is the completion of incomplete responses and ensuring the discharge of threat and danger. In other words, I learned that the highly activated, incomplete response inherent in chronic pain, in my chronic pain, was my nervous system's frozen memory of perceived threat. And so I had to rewind the videotape of my life to see where that had come from. And that, in order to feel safe again, we need to learn how to discharge the traumatized imprint and practice knowing why. Why do we need to do that in the first place? Because the individual in pain must also learn the discipline of doing it regularly, just as the pain arose regularly as a learned response. The individual needs to take responsibility for their health outcome, and no one else can do that. And that is a very hard lesson that no physical therapist, no psychiatrist, no psychologist, no doctor, no nurse, no parent, no friend, no spouse can do this for you. Only you can do it for you. And that is both empowering and very, very terrifying at the same time for some people to realize, to admit that they need to do that. But to do so, this person will also need the right tools and techniques, and to invest ample time in themselves. They need to have social support and know where they can get guidance, and whether that guidance be from a plant or from a person. And that brings me to trauma-informed plant medicine facilitation. You can do this on your own, as I did. It's the hard way. It's the long way. It's the way of lots of trial and error. It's by no means linear. And if you want to do that, feel free. But with trauma-informed plant medicine facilitation, you have a person who is there to help you to complete those incomplete responses that Dr. Peter Levine mentioned, that are observed in conditions such as chronic pain, and not just chronic pain, but also any chronic illness such as depression, addiction, and so on. And with the help of plant medicines, the participant can discharge that psychophysical memory of threat in a safe, responsible way. In the absence of proper training or with the right person, however, this discharge has the potential to actually be either re-traumatizing with plant medicines, especially the very powerful ones such as ayahuasca, mushrooms, and so forth. That's the reason why we here at cinco.medicos, why I as the director, are trained and certified in trauma-informed care techniques, and have apprenticed with shamans and tribal elders, and have worked in the mental health field. And again, we have significant direct experience discharging our own traumas, walking through the fire ourselves. And personally, if I were to try to heal from chronic pain and someone had not suffered from that condition themselves and known how to heal it and done it themselves, I wouldn't personally trust that individual to help me, because they just don't know. The academic understanding is not sufficient for someone's true knowledge of the condition. And so all of these components are essential to helping to facilitate an intense healing process for people with trauma and working to resolve conditions such as chronic pain. So again, using myself as a case study, I have significant experience with both these medicines and with these conditions. I have been using psychedelics for almost 20 years, and when I was incredibly sick, I first learned how to discharge my own frozen activated responses to threat and danger, as Dr. Levine described. So through the regular and responsible use of plant medicines, including but not limited to morning glory seeds, psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, wachuma or San Pedro, kratom or kratom, cannabis, Sanango, Marusa, Noirao, coca, passion flower, cacao, chuchuasi, tobacco, sananga, and many more herbs and flowers and medicinal mushrooms. I gradually began to learn how the process of healing works, and on my own body and for other people as well. And obviously this is no easy fix. I would be lying to you if I said it was anything but a long and arduous journey with an unbelievable number of deep layers. And you would just be amazed at how far the rabbit hole goes, whether that's ancestral or within this lifetime only. But that's why, like everything else that I had tried up to that point, from sports medicine and physical therapy to painkillers and getting MRIs done, the plants actually worked. And as one of my teachers, Shipibo Maestro Don Enrique, put it, the plants are slow but thorough. They get the job done. And he was right. I was no longer crying in agony. I wasn't walking hunched over, hobbling like an old man. I could finally sit again. Sitting like this was absolutely impossible, and I could even sleep through the night. All my grief and my dread as well had disappeared. So as you can imagine, it was a very poignant moment when I said goodbye to forever to my chronic pain by leaving my walking cane behind in the heart of the jungle. And so the reason I share my personal story here is because it's actually very relatable. During my odyssey with pain and plant medicine, I truly understood better than any doctor or psychologist had or could have why my chronic pain had arisen, and how chronic pain it works in general. Most importantly, I learned that although everybody's story and body are indeed unique, we all have the ability to heal ourselves if we wish and are willing to do the work. Developmentally speaking, I learned how, for most of us, chronic pain actually begins in childhood, when our nervous system first learns to detect danger. And with each experience that feels physically or emotionally unsafe to a child, our developing brain learns to go into protective mode, and more quickly, its alarm system becomes increasingly sensitive. Children who froze as a response to stressful situations have a much higher chance of developing a tendency toward disassociation, anxiety, or panic disorders, which I later developed. I had regular panic attacks as well, and even post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, as a response to triggering events that resemble childhood trauma. That disassociation can be one of the most harmful ways that one freezes. We get so familiar with disassociation that substances like alcohol begin to feel a lot like coming home, because it's what we know best, it's what we're most familiar with. And so why do children freeze? Well, because in order to survive a stressful situation that they can't leave, they need to adapt and cope however they can. And so children may therefore minimize the pain that they're in if it means pleasing their caregivers and being socially accepted in the family. So over time, the child may learn to ignore and suppress an ongoing state of tension and vigilance in their nervous system, such that this freeze response becomes a deeply ingrained habit. And the tension and hypervigilance turn into states that they're so familiar with that the child thinks it's really the only one available and natural to them. As the child grows up, their overprotective nervous system meets the everyday stresses of adulthood, and that's when the physical symptoms often begin to manifest. Maybe first as headaches, migraines, stomach issues, muscle tension, backaches, rapid heart rate, and so on down the line. Add a major event such as a change in relationship, housing, employment status, financial standing, an acute injury, or just other traumatic stress like a multi-year pandemic, natural disasters like wildfires or floods, anything in your life that is acutely traumatic, and then the chronic symptoms can really, really take off. And this etiology or developmental cause and effect chain was exactly what happened to me. For years, I grew up in a very anxious household. To cope, I learned to just bottle it in, to please my caretakers. As I got older, I graduated during an economic crisis. I moved across the country. I experienced unemployment multiple times. I suffered from a major back injury and also absorbed that frozen position that we see in a lot of our desk and computer work these days, and the chronic stress of our Western culture to boot. We live in a very chronically stressed, chronically traumatized culture. And so all of those factors compounded, that's when physical symptoms started to manifest in me. For me, it was IT band pain, and then it was panic attacks, which would be like crying spells or hyperventilation, feelings of imminent death. All of that became very common. I slipped a disc, and that turned into sciatica, a very painful condition whose severity I had learned as a kid to minimize, and then more computer work turned into radiculopathy, which is a fun word to say, but that's pain in the neck and numbness in the shoulder and the arm, all of which kind of just flared into this general fibromyalgia. I had insomnia and so on until I could no longer walk, and on the really bad days I couldn't even stand, and at least without any help. And the positive and the negative, however you want to interpret this, is that the nervous system is plastic, extremely plastic. So we learn how to be in pain, but we can also unlearn it. And on the learning side, it can pick up habits such as pain very easily. Our nervous system practices activating a particular symptom. So that makes it easier to activate that symptom again and again and again, just like practicing an instrument, until the pain becomes a learned neural pathway and you just do it automatically. And as the pain becomes chronic, our mind becomes more and more protective. We detect danger everywhere. They're mowing outside. Even when there is no danger whatsoever. So, for example, when my wife would try to hug me, I would just wince in agony. Or when the 4th of July fireworks were going off, or a door slammed down the hall in my apartment, my entire body would just automatically just clench into this tight ball. And this is the stage when the individual truly begins to suffer. Their physical activity, their social life, relationships, identity, mental health, daily routine, all of that are adversely affected. And fear and vigilance are the primary substrate for the brain now. The brain is feeding off of fear and hypervigilance, looking out for threats or danger. And the condition has advanced to the point such that in order to heal, the person needs to understand now, okay, why? Why did these things happen, before they can even begin to know how to release that memory of the imprints of pain that have accumulated over time, as I mentioned. So to sort of wrap up, so this video doesn't get too long, plant medicines can be the very catalysts which help us to understand that why, that help us to go into the roots of our pain more deeply on an intellectual, emotional, spiritual, and energetic level, and then they appear to work their magic at least partly through the subconscious, the innate intelligence of the body. So we're talking bottom up rather than top down, and that's why talk therapy, is not really going to help, because it's working on your executive functioning, and you really need to access the trauma imprints through the body. And breath work and other body practices like qigong, yoga can all be very helpful as adjuncts, but I've found through my own experience and in talking to others with these conditions that plant medicines really are that, well, they can be like a jackhammer or they can be like a masseuse, but on the inside. And acupuncture and other techniques, learn what works for you, for your body, your condition, wherever you're at. That's all that matters. But in my opinion, plant medicines are a major contributor to healing. And so, for example, the way I healed, for many ceremonies, you could find me tremoring, shaking, stretching, breathing, sweating, purging, you name it. I was getting those memories out of the body. And in effect, that's what led to my healing. It wasn't a $200 massage that was going to do it. It just didn't work. It wasn't deep enough. And through that, I also learned how to reset the electrical network that comprises my nervous system, by putting my heart to the earth, tuning it to the frequencies and vibrations of nature, and how to use my hands on myself and on others to install new, healing, safe harmonies that feel more like care and like balance, homeostasis. And over time, it felt like I was updating my nervous system's software. So for some, maybe that was like a clunky 80s desktop OS to the newest state-of-the-art 21st technology. And so it felt like I was running on something that actually worked, and worked fast, and worked the way that nature designed it to. And all of this is to say that, again, luckily we can heal from chronic pain. Recovery is possible, and that is the silver lining of chronic pain, that there is hope, because what we learn, we can also unlearn. And still, it's very important that we, especially, I'm talking about people from the West, that we dispense with the idea of temporarily relieving pain or treating a list of physical symptoms. Because at that point, it is too late. It is really just what is showing itself, right? It's not the cause itself. It's not the root. And this just does not work. Again, in my opinion, from my perspective, no matter how sophisticated your science and technology, and I honor and admire many of the discoveries of science, but it doesn't matter how well researched your psychiatry or psychology is. It doesn't matter what fancy instruments you use to permanently heal illness of this sort. We must first begin to really explore the energetic roots and psycho-spiritual trauma underlying the physical illness. And this is the way of plant medicine. This is the way of shamanism, naturopathic medicine, and alternative holistic healing techniques. And it's not woo-woo, it's actually highly sophisticated. It's been developed through trial and error over thousands of years. And it's also the long and the hard way, which is why many of us are not doing it. But it's important for us to all realize that plant medicine is also not a quick fix. It's not sorry for the shaking, it's not the magic pill. Far from it. If the pain took years to develop, it can take just as long to heal. And although this is not necessarily the case, but to heal, you really need to commit to the road. You need to dedicate yourself to putting your best, most earnest effort in, and courageously participate in the process. And the more we indulge in our passive Western ways, expecting others to do it for us, the more likely the pain or the truth will likely come back to teach you yet another lesson. And so if you are suffering from chronic pain and you feel like you're ready to do the work, you've gotten to that point where it's just insufferable at this point, please feel free to get in touch with me. Visit my website at cinco.medicos.com, or drop me an email at cinco.medicos at protonmail.com, and we can just chat about your condition, how plant medicines may be able to help you. Again, there are no guarantees here, but we can at least begin the conversation. So I wish you all the best, luck, and good fortune on your healing journey. Thanks for watching, and take care. Bye.